Hello there. I wanted to tell you of a testimony that I had in 2004. I didn't go to church. I didn't pray. I hadn't gone to church in perhaps, well, it seemed like 10 years. And if I prayed, it was probably just a handful of times. I was consumed with my life and only my life and family's life, and I didn't really pay attention to the cares of others. Mostly it was about my life and my family's life. I was going through some things, and I was feeling very sad. And I went to the library to get some books on psychology, and a book popped out at me, and it was about this guy that remembered heaven. And well, I thought that maybe I was skeptical about the book, and I found it interesting, and I thought that I would go ahead and I would check it out and read it. But I was very skeptical about it. And I got home, I went ahead and I settled myself to read, and I looked at the pages, the first pages that they have about the book and stuff, and I rolled my eyes. I said, we'll see. Anyways, I went ahead and I checked out that book. And this man was talking about his memories of heaven, his pre-birth memories of heaven. And in YouTube I've had something similar. And not as extravagant as his, but definitely extravagant in his own right. And when I was a kid, I told my mom about it. And I told my family about it. And they heard me, and they were amazed and stuff, but we went on with life as normal. They didn't know what to say about it, because I guess they'd never gone through something like that, so they didn't know what to say. But this man was talking about something similar. And when I was done with that book, I knew it was real. And I ran throughout the house. I was filled with so much happiness, because I knew that my experience was real. Because he was talking about things, men that I knew about. And he doesn't know me, and I don't know him. And that just, oh, wow. I ran through the house, and I was explaining, it was real. It was real. Well, I forgave everybody everything. I repented for every single sin I've ever had. I went back all the way to my childhood days. I named my sins one by one. And my faith increased by 150%. My love for God grew even more. It grew. I've always loved the Lord, but I mean, when it came at me, and I was so happy. I felt the love of God. It felt wonderful. I can't explain it. I felt like I was in His hands, in His heart, in His love. And it felt peaceful, and it felt overwhelming in my chest. It was just all around me. It was so nice. Well, I ended up moving across the country, and I was going through a divorce, and I went to live with my mom. And over there, we were going to church, and I was determined to learn about the Bible. I mean, I used to study the Bible as a child and stuff, but I really didn't know very much, like a lot. I didn't know. So I wanted to know as much as I could. So I went ahead and I had this church pick me up, and we were visiting that church, and they would have a church bus that would come and pick up the people. Well, the bus came to pick us up, and on the way to church, I was thinking that perhaps perhaps God, maybe he didn't want me. Because I had a thought that came into my mind, and a word, as if, and I believe that it came from the Lord, and I thought that he didn't want me around, that church was meant for better people, that I would offend God with my presence there. And it took a moment to sink in, because when we got to the church, I went in with my family, and I sat down, but I was feeling very uncomfortable, because I felt like I was in the house of a person that didn't want me there. I felt unwelcome, and I didn't want God to feel offended by my presence. So I got up, and I was leaving the church. And I was only there for 10 minutes. I had just arrived. The church service had just started. And my kids came behind me, my older daughter and my younger daughter. And my mom and the pastor's wife. And my daughter said, "Mommy, where are you going?" And I said, "Well, I'm going home. We're leaving." And she said, "Well, we just got here. I don't want to stay. Mommy, please stay in church. Mommy, please don't go." That's what she was saying. She was 6 years old. And that's what she was saying. She started to cry. She wanted to stay in church. So I told her, my family was there. So I told her, "You could stay, but I'm going home." And my older daughter wanted to come with me, and I told her no. I told her to stay. But she wasn't listening. She just wanted to come home with me because she didn't want to leave me by myself. My mom was like, "Oh my." And the pastor's wife said, "Where are you going?" And I told her, "I'm going home." She said, "Why? You just got here." And I said, "You wouldn't understand." Because truly, I didn't feel that she would understand the abandonment that I felt in my soul. I mean, God is the biggest source of strength that we have, that I have. Even in my life, when I wasn't going to church, God was still my source of strength. When I wasn't in the Word, when I was living in the world, in my sense of thinking, He was still my sense of strength. And for Him not to want me was the worst thing that could happen to anybody. It's the worst thing that could ever happen to me. And this woman couldn't possibly understand that. And I knew that she would come up with all sorts of excuses, and she could not possibly understand how I felt inside. Because I felt that I knew what God was thinking. Seriously, 100%. And what I felt was that He didn't want me. So, as my daughter cried and cried and cried, at the top of her lungs, just insisting that I stay. I mean, she was crying very loud. It was quite the scene outside that church. Pastor's wife, my mom, and my daughter crying. And the other one, I believe, was crying too, but I'm not 100% sure. Eventually she did. But anyways, I turned around and I left. And as I was leaving, my older one came with me, and I insisted that she go back, but she wouldn't leave. And we walked in silence. She was crying and sad. And I was angry. And that's how we were walking home. Now, I didn't know the way home because I was new in that city. But I was going to get there. We passed